First of all, IT World Canada with iCanada is launching this study. And I've been working very closely with Berry, and I thank iCanada for its support. We feel that this is a very important study. IT World, as a publisher, likes to find a few very important movements that they can get behind. I think you heard them all here today. So besides the Intelligent City and crowdfunding, we also have open data. For me, it's kind of going back to the past because I started my career with open systems. So without further ado, I'm turning this over to Jury.
Thanks very much, Fawn. Open data is certainly a passion of mine, and it's a bit of a collaboration because this is Barry's laptop, so thank you, Barry. Next slide, please. When we talk about open data, it's really about access, transparency, and leveraging municipal government data. And I think that's one of the things that we don't realize enough in municipal government, and I spent 10 years there, is understanding that the data is a huge strategic asset that probably isn't leveraged the way that it should be. And when we look at then the assets of all of the various governments and combine them, there's a huge potential that's untapped right now. So accessibility as both digital data via the web or mobile devices is something that is happening, and it's gained momentum. Certainly in the last 2 or 3 years I've seen it expand, and it's very pervasive because we can see it all the way from the World Bank right until all levels of government, and municipal governments, quite frankly, are the leaders in this domain. Probably the reason is because they're agile, right? If you're comparing levels of government, the municipal governments are the most agile, and I think that's to our advantage because we're all talking about the fact that if we're looking at moving forward with innovation and making progress, that it's at the local level. This is an illustration of where the open data exists globally. It's a map that was produced by a nonprofit out of Paris, and it shows 189 catalogs. Open data catalogs that exist throughout the world. It indicates that there are 22 in Canada, but I can tell you that I know that there are over 30, so it's a little bit out of date. But it gives you some kind of sense of how pervasive open data is globally. When we look at what you actually see, quite often it's the data catalogs themselves, and I've illustrated on the left-hand side there that we have open data that's coming from the World Bank, and I noticed a tweet that next week is called Open Access Week. It's an international event, and the World Bank is taking on some initiative there and live streaming it. And I've shown the two kind of leading examples of open data, at the national level. And it's the U.S. and it's the U.K. It's certainly not Canada. We're a little bit behind, maybe about 2 or 3 years behind, the level of activity that is happening in those countries. On the right-hand side, you're seeing the open data catalogs or the landing pages for those for Toronto, for Ottawa, Edmonton, Vancouver, Calgary, and Montreal. And the first 4 that I mentioned formed a group called the G4 a couple of years ago, and I was privileged to work on a project to create the open data framework for them. And there's a lot of progress and collaboration that is starting among a lot of different groups of municipalities, but not necessarily at a national level. We need that national collaboration happening for open data. So next slide, please. So why open data? Why would we consider that for municipalities? One of the things is that they can offer efficiencies, enhanced service delivery, and there's an economic development opportunity here, and it relates obviously to innovation. So municipalities are the front line for service and must be both proactive and innovative in the way that they deliver service and dealing with requests from their citizens and their businesses. And they need to be proactive about it, particularly with the restraint on resources that they currently have. And the majority of municipalities, majority of citizens are living in municipalities are looking for government to enhance their e-service delivery, whether that's through the web or through a mobile application. The whole range of sensor webs, some of which we've heard about today, it continues. and the need to move towards intelligent systems and thereby becoming intelligent communities or a part thereof. Next slide. So when we look at the government efficiencies and effectiveness, interestingly enough, in government, irrespective of what level of government, many governments actually don't know what data they have. And that data, before, we talked about it being a strategic asset. It's not an asset if you don't know it exists, and it's not an asset if there's only one small group within government that's able to access that. So looking at access to the internal data, the reduced costs related to requests for that data, whether it's coming internally or externally, the amount of time and money that is spent in dealing with requests for data is significant. And also opening up the data assistance systems integrations, systems that don't typically talk to each other. When we understand kind of the infrastructure that we have around data, the ability to integrate some of the systems and get them working together to our mutual benefit is going to happen. Enhanced service delivery. The actual direct access to government information as opposed to always having to rely on FOI, pulling the information. And then the new software applications for citizens that are derived from the data being made available. And it was interesting that I heard that they were questioning people about if we move from 24 hours to 25 hours, what would you do with the extra hour? The people that develop applications, they said, I'd spend that extra hour coding. So you can kind of get where their headspace is at. Economic development opportunities. We had talked about the need to support and nurture startups. Open data does that. Data value-added resellers, sector innovation and jobs is another area. So when we look at it from a point of view of how large is this market, there was a study done by the European Commission dealing with public information. And they talked about the mobile apps market reaching $35 billion by 2015. So that's very significant. It's one of the fastest growing segments that exist out there. I don't know that I would agree with that number. I don't know how they came up with it. But it gives you kind of the scope, how large we're talking about. And so what feeds these applications that are being developed, particularly in the mobile market? It's the open data. I've just taken 3 examples here. One on the left-hand side is called Recollect, a private company, a startup that's doing quite well now. And this was all about recycling, providing information to the citizens through their smartphones as to when the garbage was going to be collected or recycled. The next one is dealing with another big area around applications. That's in the transportation sector. Everybody wants to know, when's the next bus? Do I have time to go and grab a coffee before the next bus or subway is coming? And the one on the right-hand side is really dealing with health inspections. And so I'm here, where are the restaurants nearby that have got an A rating on the health inspections? I don't want to go to someone that's got a C or has failed. So when we look at the public-facing views of open data, I've illustrated a couple here. The top left is the open data portal for Montreal. And on the bottom, we have a lot of citizen engagement things happening in things such as unconferences and GovUps or GovCamps, change camps that are defining the issues, and by defining the issues, actually identifying opportunities, to improve the level of service or increase the service. And one of the things that you find, again, when I spoke about the people taking the extra hour to do coding, you talk about hackathons and code fests. This is where the people get together and code, and they love it. Now, I've been involved in 3 or 4 of these. I don't know how to code, but I do know I'm an end user, so I provide design considerations and also do research for these people. While they're doing the coding, I'm doing research. So it's a community building exercise as well. Next. And it's very active. These people are creating these communities on their own. This is not something that's being pushed by government. It's grassroots. And I think a number of times we've heard about the importance of grassroots. And open data certainly illustrates the power of grassroots. And I've just illustrated 4 here, being Montreal, Open Data London, Open Data Ottawa, Open Data Halton. These are all citizen-led groups, and they've made great progress in both developing applications and recommending things for governments to do in moving open data together. And then the last kind of connection I think that's really important is the fact that open data, whether it's government data or corporate data, community data or science data, all of that feeds into the ability for us to innovate and move towards an intelligent community. And what we want ultimately is to move towards a world-recognized intelligent nation. So with that, I want to turn it over to Berry to provide some insight into the work we're doing.
Great, thank you, Jury, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here and to bring some other thoughts forward around the study from a municipal perspective. And I do want to thank both Berry and iCanada and Fawn and IT World Canada for the leadership that they've shown in terms of undertaking this study for municipalities, and for the opportunity to be chair of the project committee that's overseeing the study. So this, if we can change the slide, please. This study will be the first syndicated study to examine open data for municipalities in Canada. In fact, if we look right now, 6 of the 10 largest Canadian cities already have open data portals today. And it's certainly not limited to them. In fact, some of the communities across the country that have already been leaders in open data include Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Ottawa, my own region, Waterloo Region, Montreal, Surrey, Mississauga, and others across the country. So it's something that's obviously a growing interest both for municipalities and for the citizens in all of our communities. The executive study that's going to be undertaken will really canvass 2 municipal groups. First of all, those over 50,000 in population, and secondly, those under 50,000 in population. We expect there will be some differences in the responses between the two and also the expectations of the community, but there will also be a fair number of similarities. So it'll be interesting to see how those responses come back. Next slide. In terms of key features of the executive study, there'll be really 7 primary areas of focus. The first one will be identifying municipal priorities when we're talking about open data. Secondly, we'll be looking at IT and service spending intentions. So trying to get an understanding of what are municipalities spending their dollars on when it comes to IT and other service delivery areas and how that affects open data. Thirdly, quantification of expected efficiencies. Obviously, this is an area that is of great interest to municipalities, particularly at a time of declining budgets. And so looking to see, what kinds of efficiencies might we be able in time to achieve that are going to have a benefit will obviously help shape, I think, to a certain degree, the speed at which this is adopted across the country. Fourthly, uses and applicability to municipal operations. So where does this make the most sense? I mean, we've seen applications across the country, for example, already that are using this with their transit systems, where the data is becoming available and people can find out instantaneously, where their bus is, when it's coming, is it running late, those kinds of things. The next 2 really are similar in a way, but buyer motives in the sense of the municipality and citizen-led motives. So what are some of the things driving this as a priority, both for municipalities and for citizens? What are their interests in terms of app creation and app purchase, and obviously, some of the purchasing around some of the technologies needed to support this. And finally, really the goal is to have a snapshot and an idea of some of the trending that's happening across the country in terms of who is doing what already and who plans to do something in the future. So in terms of study strategic insights, 5 areas here that we want to focus on. Community expectations. So in other words, what is the public expecting? This is really one of the driving forces, that anecdotally we've heard from communities that have taken the jump already in open data. What are some of the expectations from the public about the use of the systems and the data that's being talked about? What are the municipal needs, the kinds of systems that are expected to be on their priority purchase list? This is obviously of interest to some of the companies in the room here who potentially may want to support the study and its process, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But obviously, this is going to lead to purchase decisions by municipalities, and hence is of interest to some of the corporations here. Thirdly, decisions. The reason some of the systems are chosen and others are not. So what is shaping municipalities' decisions that have already gone down this path? Fourth, best practices. Obviously, as we've heard countless times, I think, over the day today, we don't want to keep reinventing the wheel. So what are some of the best practices that have been learned from those who have been early adopters of open data in the use of the systems? And finally, getting some municipal profiles of municipal buyers and the services that they're going to seek going forward. Some concluding thoughts. The reality is more and more we're seeing greater degrees of urbanization globally. By 2050, 70% of the people on this planet will be living in urban municipalities, representing some 9 billion humans. Think about that. It's a huge number, and the shift that's happening every day. I just read something recently that's saying basically a city, the population of 1 million people is being created each week between now and 2050 to get to that number. It's huge. So the need to respond to increasing public pressure for services isn't going to go away across the country. Open data is becoming one of the critical tools for service alignment and engagement with our citizenry, and most importantly for transparency and good government. So the reality is this isn't a nice to have. I think local governments across this country need this study, and most importantly, we're going to need the participation of local governments across the country. I know some of the municipalities that are no doubt here in this room will be keen on getting involved, and they're probably going to be the ones that are easy adopters of participating because you already are leaders in terms of IT. But others are going to need to be convinced, and I'll be looking to some of the municipal leaders in the room to help convince municipalities and their IT folks in those communities to participate, so that through this study we can help local governments and quite frankly help our citizens in delivering the services that we need. So our ask, ultimately we're going to want to fill out the advisory council. We're going to be looking for mayors from across the country, from different size communities to potentially sit on the advisory council, as well as some IT professionals. And secondly, and most importantly, we're going to need industry support to raise approximately $190,000 to properly support the research and expose the findings throughout Canada and to all identified stakeholders. This is something that obviously Fawn and her very capable team, who does this on a regular basis at IT World Canada, is going to take the lead on and make happen. And then that information will obviously be available to municipalities and partners as we go along. So that would be the summary on the open data stuff, and I think we have a few minutes for questions, even though my clock has disappeared. So, thank you.
I want to thank Jury and I want to thank Berry for helping out on this presentation.